It's not easy to make croissants at home, but we're gonna try it, okay? And what we're gonna do for that, there's a couple of steps to doing it, and I'm gonna walk you through it, and it is gonna take 2 days to make. However, so I made a chocolate croissant, I made regular croissants, I made bread pudding with the croissants by making croutons, essentially. And I also made some donuts. So really, it's really versatile. You can make a lot of things with this. And you can even use it to make danishes. And danishes are always good, right? Okay, so to get it started, it's a 2-day process. And only thing you need, besides the ingredients, flour, water, sugar, salt, yeast, and milk, just need your hands. Okay? And of course, butter. Butter's the most important thing. All right, so if I make my poolish is essentially fermented dough that I'm gonna make on the first day, day 1. And the poolish is just an equal amount of flour and milk, bread flour and milk, sorry, not milk, water, and a small amount of yeast. And we're gonna leave this overnight for about 16, 18 hours, right? About, let's say 12 to 14 hours. I think that's a better time frame. We're gonna leave it overnight, and then we're gonna get it into our bowl the next day when it's nice and spongy, right? And we're gonna mix it with our other ingredients, which are flour, bread flour, sugar, salt, yeast. These are our dries, and then our milk and our water. And as you can tell, it's hard to get certain ingredients like flour and milk. So I had some milk that was going sour. I decided to use that milk for cooking instead, right? I'm just gonna add it in there. So everything's in here, and I'm just gonna mix it all together, right? Really easy to do. So we mix this together. Now, you're asking, why don't I just use my KitchenAid? Well, that's because not everyone has a KitchenAid. And, you know, I was just looking through a lot of books, right? I mean, this is a good time to kind of do R&D. I was looking through a lot of books, and I came up on this recipe, and I thought it'd be really cool if you could just make it by hand and not need anything at all, right? So once you have that, just finish mixing it by hand. At this point, this is a short mix. So this is the old school way where you do everything by hand. And, you know, there's a long fermentation process involved, which was our poolish from the day 1, right? And then the second day you just mix by hand. And then you're just gonna do a couple of folds. And the folds are what gonna really help develop the gluten, right? So we have this. I'm gonna grab it. Just gonna finish kneading it on the table, right? Just knead it. Oh, you know what I'm missing here? I'm actually missing the melted butter, right? So I'm gonna take my butter, I'm gonna melt it. And once it's melted, I'm just gonna incorporate it to this dough. And in fact, I could have done that with my liquids, right? It's really important. Get that going in here. Right, and you see that the dough, it's got some body to it, right? It is a little firm. Now, the important thing about croissant dough when we make it, let's say at work, an industrial setting like a pastry shop, is we actually don't want to work it for too long. We just usually mix it for about 5 minutes on the mixer, right? And then the idea, of course, being that all the folds that we're going to give to it when we incorporate the butter, that's what's really going to give it more body. We don't want to have too much body, right? But we do want to have a nice crumb. So this is our dough, like this. Looks fine, right? It's all together. It's homogenous. It's got some body, and it's not overworked. And hey, I really didn't work it that much, right? Take this, put it back in your bowl, put it back in the bowl, plastic wrap on top, and then you're gonna leave it in your fridge for 2 hours. So you could use gloves, so you don't have to, you could just use gloves, mix everything, and then afterwards just remove the gloves, throw them in the trash. However, we're all on short supply of gloves right now. We take our dough that we've left in the fridge for 2 hours, right? And there you go. Wow, look at that dough. I made a bigger batch for the laminating, right? Drop that on the table. So this is where we're gonna actually laminate our dough. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a rolling pin and we're gonna roll out our dough. Look at that, it's not too sticky. However, I am gonna drop a little bit of flour on there. and I'm going to just roll it. So essentially what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a butter block that I'm going to put right in the middle, and I'm going to fold my, my dough over the butter. And that's going to start the process of laminating, right? Which is a really interesting process. However, I don't have my butter just yet. My butter is right here. So this is my butter. I have 100 grams of butter for all the dough that I have over here, right? Generally when I'm at work, I would do 5.5 kilos of dough and 2 kilos of butter, right? What I need to do now is I need to flatten this out to create the butter block. So that's pretty easy. And given this, what I have going on over here, there's a couple of different ways that you can lock in your butter. I am going to show you, let's see, I'm going to show you a cool method that I learned from Neighbor's Bakehouse over in San Francisco with Chef Greg Mindell. I really like this method. There's other methods too that I've learned where you can do a fold when you fold in your butter, but what I'm going to show you right now, very quickly, is how you're going to lock in your butter. Locking in the butter is the first step of adding your butter to your croissant dough. So I'll just take a piece of parchment, I'll drop my butter inside, and then I'm going to whack it out. Now industrially, we receive butter that's already sheeted out to the specs that we want, and they're available in kilo or 2.2 pounds. All right? And the important thing here too is my butter obviously is not super soft, right? It's got some flex to it, right? That's important because you don't want your butter to just get totally absorbed by your dough, right? You want it to be, if it's too cold, it'll create chunks. If it's too soft, it'll just kind of squeeze right out everywhere, right? So we have this. Come back with our dough. Alexa, stop timer. It's really useful. Should have those at work, you know? All right. You know what? I'm not sure. I'm going to show you the easier way. I'm going to show you an easier way. Okay? So this is not the method that I typically use, or it's the method that I use for Danish dough. So in this method, what we're going to do is we're going to leave about an inch margin at the bottom, or ½ inch margin, again, depending on the size that we have going on. And then we're going to do a fold where it's 2/3 of the butter. And then the rest of it is the actual, the dough, right? So when we have here this, we scrape this out, make sure it's nice and flush. For me, it doesn't seem like there's enough butter in this croissant, but that's okay for this time, right? We fold it over here, and then we fold this part equally, as you can see, equal, right? We fold that part right over here. And there we go. So what we've essentially done to lock it in is we have a layer of dough, a layer of butter, a layer of dough, and a layer of butter, and another layer of dough, right? So it's locked in. Get rid of this parchment. It's really not helping my case out. This croissant dough seems very wet to me. So I'll lock in, drop some flour. What we're gonna do is roll it out a little bit, and roll it the long way. So let's say I was using a sheeter. If I was using a sheeter, which we use for dough at work, right? It'll sheet it out. I would bring this down, all the way down to, what would I bring it down to? I'd bring it down to 5 or 6. Then I would do my first fold. So this is a single fold, right? There's a lot of different techniques. I'll show you really quickly the different techniques, but this is a single fold, like that, right? So essentially you have your dough, you fold it over, left, and then the right, and you keep everything aligned, and that's one single fold. You can do a double, which is where you fold it over here, and you fold it over here, and then you stack both of those, and that's a double fold, right? And then you can do a triple, which is essentially a double and a single. You know what? I'm not gonna get you going on a triple fold. We'll just do a single and double are the most widely used in the industry. All right, so in order to do this, I do my single fold, which I'm gonna do 2 single folds. So this is my first one, right? I sheet it out. And then I do another one. So you can lock in your butter and do 2 single folds at one time, followed by a 20-minute rest, and then you do your last fold, your third fold, okay? But you have to let it rest. If you don't let it rest, it's not good for the dough. Croissant winds up being a lot tougher, right? We'll get this going the long way. All right, you always want to see where your seam was, which was initially here, and this is my spine, right? Okay, and then once I have that, it still needs to be a little bit longer. Then I'm going to do another single fold. There we go. And as you can see, I'm not using too much flour. If you use too much flour, what tends to happen is there can be a separation of layers, and we don't want that. All right, there we go. So we've got 2 folds right here, 2. We're gonna put it on our parchment. Well, we can use the same parchment as earlier, or you can put it on parchment and then just use plastic wrap, but trying to avoid using too much plastic wrap. So just a little bit of flour, and you can leave that in the fridge for made in Syria. Thank you. Thanks for approving. All right, so we're gonna leave this in the fridge for 20 minutes. Okay, so it's rested in the fridge 20 minutes. I give it another single fold, and that's my third fold. I let it rest another 20 minutes or 30 minutes or even overnight, which it can rest in the freezer, or you can let it rest in the fridge for about an hour, but you really want it nice and cold, you know, and then you're gonna work it on your table. So what you're gonna do here, the last thing is, I started sheeting this dough, and I'm gonna finish sheeting it right now, and so I can show you how you're gonna cut it, right? So I roll it out. I want it nice and thin. I don't want it too thick, right? So generally, if we were to get this on the sheeter, we would sheet this all the way down to 3 or 2.5, depending on the type of croissant. Or if we want something with really a lot of layers, we're gonna, you know, with a nice, like, you can really see the well-developed layers, we'll sheet it down to 4, right? But we're at home, right? So you guys who are at home and who are just baking at home have no idea what I'm talking about. So we're just gonna roll it till it's really thin, and if I were to guess, I would say this is maybe a little less than 1/4 inch. Actually, when we sheet to the numbers, 3 is 3 millimeters, right? Thanks, Christopher. I hope this is helpful for you. All right, so when we do this, we're gonna sheet it out. Now, you remember earlier when we rolled it out, when we locked in our butter, we left that margin, like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch margin, depending on the size of our block, right? So when we do that, there's no butter where those margins were, right? So at the bottom and the top, there's no butter. So I'm gonna trim that, right? That's gonna get trimmed right away on the sides, and then on the top and bottom, and then even on the sides, I'm quickly gonna trim it. And what you see right here, you see all this trim. So what can you do with all this dough? Well, you can do another fold with all of your dough, and you can use that for danishes. Or you can throw this into your next batch of croissants, or you can fry it and make little, you know, croissant donuts, just really simple little bits of donuts, or just bake it off, and then we can make little croutons. After we bake it, we chop it up. We can do, what do we call that? Monkey bread, you know, toss it with some sugar, cinnamon sugar, or ginger and cinnamon sugar. Or, you know, we can do monkey bread, or we can just do little croutons of croissants that we could then make bread pudding with. Bread pudding, right? Very easy. And I'll walk you through the bread pudding afterwards. But right here, it's not as easy to do this in a kitchen that does not have great climate control. But let's just say that we're doing this right over here, right? We have a ruler. I have a small ruler. And for my chocolate croissants, and I also, can I get some chocolate? Just the chocolate pistils. So for a chocolate croissant, and I want a small one, let's say like this one, I'm gonna go 2.5 by 2.5 inches by 4 inches, right? So I'll just cut, so I know this is, let's say 4.5 inches right here, then I'll just go 2.5 going this way, right? And I would use a bicycle cutter, and I know some of you who have seen my stuff before have seen me use a bicycle cutter, right? So I have some, you know, fairly old chocolate pistils, one of my favorite chocolates, 70%. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, I wouldn't roll them up now ordinarily. Ordinarily I would cut everything, leave it to chill in the fridge or freeze them and then let them thaw and then I would roll them. But I'm gonna roll them now. And so maybe I'm gonna do 2 pistils, roll it up over, right? And then do another pistil and then roll it again and then sealing it. See, when you do this now, it's just way too soft, right? The dough is way too soft to be rolling it. So you see it's not really holding its shape nicely like you would want it to. But you do see that generally it's what we're looking for, right? So you cut everything, right? And then, yes, I am also homeschooling. So you cut all your croissant dough first into the shapes that you want, right? And then if we're gonna cut our croissants, we're gonna go for triangles that are pretty much almost the same size, right? And you see you have a triangle right here. When my triangle, what I'm looking for is I'll spread it out. Then I'll, just like I'm rolling a little cigar or cigarette, which I have no idea about, but let's just say that's what we're doing, right? You have that here and you just roll the dough. And again, the colder your dough is, the easier it's gonna be to work with, right? And we're just rolling it, right? And there we go. We have a little regular croissant and we have a chocolate croissant, okay? So let's do that again really quickly. And again, the point of this is like a quick overview, right? Showing you how you really can do it at home. So you see we have our triangle right here, right? If our triangle's too thick at the edge, we're just gonna roll it out to thin it out. That's generally, I like to do that. And then from here, I'm gonna roll it nice and tight. And then as I roll it, I roll outwards. So I don't roll in, but I roll outwards. And I kind of get these little like swine ears as they call them, right? I roll them outwards. And there we go. This one looks a little nicer, right? And again, for me, this dough is very soft, but I'm not expecting too much from something that I literally just mixed by hand, right? So all of this, you can leave to freeze. Like this, I will get to later, right? I think just to do the demo, I had to do like 2.5 batches of croissant dough. So, you know, I'm not complaining. I'm gonna be enjoying it. But you would leave them on a tray. Leave them on a tray with a little bit of distance, right? And then what you would do, actually, I should show you that, is you would egg wash them. So the egg wash is very important too, right? And an egg wash that I like to use is generally almost equal parts yolks and heavy cream, which I already have made, of course. Right? So let's say I have this going on. And again, all of this is trim. I can't use it, but I can do I can laminate it again, you know, doing a single fold and use it for Danish dough. Or I can chop it up and make croutons for bread pudding. Or I can just fry it and have croissant donuts. Okay? So all this, it's gonna go away. So I have my yolks and my heavy cream right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a brush. I mean, you can use a silicone brush. They're just super easy to clean, or you can use a regular pastry brush, right? And then you're just gonna give it a quick brush, right? And just brush the top, right? When you do your croissants, you only wanna brush where the layers are, right? You don't wanna brush the entire thing, right? I let my daughter brush those. I probably should have done those earlier. But as you can see, I mean, that's kind of the dark color you're gonna get, right? I mean, these look like homemade croissants, which kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but I'm really proud because I've never made croissants at home. I've only made them at work. And all the places that I've worked at, I've always like played around making croissants or actually have had to make them in high production, right? So then there we go. We have that. We do our egg wash, you know, and then we just let them proof, right? So we can let them proof and egg wash, or we can just egg wash them and throw them in the freezer. I mean, it really won't matter, okay? Especially if you're doing this at home. When you proof them, what you're looking for is for them to double up in size, right? At least 1.5 to 2 times in size. They're gonna proof. And recipe recap for sure. I will do that. I'll do another one, right? Made in Syria. Yes. So we do this. And to proof, easy way to proof is just plastic wrap. So first, what you have to do is you leave them in the fridge overnight, and then the next day you let them proof, right? You get a better flavor. There's a little more fermentation. So fermentation always creates a better flavor in any kind of bread, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull them out of the fridge the next day, and we're gonna proof them. And it's gonna take a few hours to proof since you don't have an actual proofer at home. What you can do is you can, just get some water boiling in a big pot, throw it in the oven, then throw, your croissants in there with it, and that way they can proof, right, without the plastic wrap on. Or you can just leave them out at room temp for hours, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, really depending on the temperature of the room, until they've proofed, and then, they're ready to go in the oven. What temperature should they be at when they go in the oven? Well, they should be at, using a regular oven like my oven, I put it at 385 for about 15, 20 minutes, right? That's what you would do. Thanks, Master Mean. Yeah, it is supposed to look kind of like this. All right, so I'm gonna quickly clean this up, and then I wanna show you the last thing that we're gonna do, which is bread pudding, which also is super easy and ties into what we just made right now. All right, so the bread pudding base, it's a very simple base. There's a lot of variations on this base, but they're all essentially the same. It's all egg, sugar, and dairy. Cream. Often it's mostly cream, which allows for a super rich flavor. I've cut it back with a little bit of milk, right? So we have milk and yolks, sugar and cream. You can infuse the dairy with vanilla beans, if you have vanilla bean. But essentially all I did was I took yolks and sugar, mixed them together, then just streamed in my cold liquid. It doesn't need to be hot, really it doesn't. But what's actually most important, so then you just mix this. But where you're really gonna get a great result from your bread pudding is when you take your croissants. Let's see, let's cut this croissant and see what it looks like inside. Let's see if it's got any kind of, so for me this looks a little bit, it's a little dense. I mean, there is a little bit of a honeycomb, but it's kind of muted. Something in a chocolate croissant, it's all expected to look something like this. In the croissant itself, all right, we do have some kind of honeycomb, so that's kind of nice. I think this is looking pretty good. I don't know if you can see that, but this is looking pretty good, right? But let's say, I don't know, maybe the croissants were out for a few days, kids didn't want to eat them, right? So why don't we just chop them up? We chop them up. Oh man, they're gonna kill me when I chop up these croissants. So we chop them up, with or without chocolate. I mean, chocolate's always really good in bread pudding, right? We're gonna chop them. We are going to toss them. I have a container right here already with some cinnamon sugar that I made this morning. And I mean, if you're doing a big quantity, you would just use a bowl, right? So you would just dry them out. I miss you guys too in the city, Edward. Right? So when you do that, you're just gonna toss the croutons with some cinnamon sugar, and there you go, okay? It comes out of the oven, so you're gonna dry them in the oven, let's say 325, 350 Fahrenheit, and then this is what you get. You get croutons, and they're a little heavier, right? I mean, it's a crouton, right? It's dry, but that's what we're looking for. What we're looking for right now is we wanna rehydrate these croutons with our pudding base, right? So we made our pudding base. Why don't we grab that? We made our pudding base, and what we can literally do, and I'll do it in the container so you see it, is we're gonna add this in, and the ratio sometimes varies. It really depends on the kind of bread that you're using, how dry it is. But as you can see, maybe this is too much liquid, right? So I do have some more bread. There was some whole wheat that no one wanted to eat. I don't know why, but I dried them out as well with some sugar, right? So I'm gonna toss those in there with my croutons, right? Just gonna mash it up, right? And generally when you do this, you're gonna let it sit for a while. Maybe you'll let it sit overnight in your fridge, right? These I made and I baked them off almost right away, right? And what I got something pretty nice, right? And what I felt too, I mean, I personally am not a fan of something that's too eggy or custardy, because that's not necessarily what I'm looking for in a bread pudding. But that's up to you. You can play with it, right? You can have more of the liquid base than the bread. So if I grab a pan, so again, bread pan, you can use a bread pan, you can use a loaf pan, you can use a coffee mug, depending what you have in the house, right? I'm gonna spray it. So I kind of crush this together, right? So there's different ways you can do this here too. Some people will maybe like fill it up, right? Like this, and then they'll pour their batter in here, right? That's one way it's done. I feel when you do it this way, you don't necessarily have much control, and sometimes you get, for me, too much liquid. So what I'd prefer to do is I would mix this up here in my container. So I mix it up in the container, mash it up. Obviously you would have gloves, right? That would really help a lot. You mash it up, and then from there, you could use a scoop. Use a scoop and get into each one, right? That way you have the same portions in each pan, right? And if you feel like you don't have enough liquid, well, you can always stream in some more liquid right here. And I'm running really low on liquid. But again, it's a very easy recipe to make. All right, and there we go. That's our bread pudding. I would put more liquid here, so I don't have enough liquid. You know, I could always make another batch, but you know, and that's probably what I will do, and I'm gonna have a lot more extra scraps, but you know what, I'm still gonna put these in the oven. I'm sure they're gonna be okay. But the more liquid, the better. What they're gonna do is they're gonna soak it up, especially if you leave it in the fridge overnight, right? So here we have our two things. We have our croissants that we've egg washed, and they're gonna go in the oven. We have our bread pudding. You know what, I'm probably gonna make some more liquid, and then I'll add it to it. And then that's gonna go in the oven, and then, yeah, so we got to make all these different things, right? That's what the end result looks like, right? And that's what it is raw. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. If there's anything that you would like for me to make, let me know as well. I'm trying to do at least 2 classes a week, you know, or 2 demos a week. I feel like it's fun. It kind of, you know, gets me busy and inspired. I mean, it's not like I'm not busy, but it definitely has me focused on, you know, some R&D and trying out some new and different techniques. All right, thanks for your time and have a great day. Oh, by the way, today is supposed to be National Takeout Day. Please do support your local businesses, whether they're restaurants or pastry shops. Do try to buy local and take out. You know, a lot of businesses are really suffering right now. Whatever you can do would help. I know there's a lot of chocolatiers in the city, like Michael Ricuti, Elbow Chocolates, or up in Napa, Collard Chocolates, Ginger Elizabeth in Sacramento and in SF. There's pastry shops like Neighbor Bakehouse. There's 165 in the city. Down in South Bay, there's, you know, Alexander's Patisserie. A lot of these places are still open. They still are doing takeout, and there's plenty of restaurants that are doing takeout as well. So please support local businesses while you can during this time. Plus, it's good food, right? I mean, they're making you great food, and you know, they can definitely use the help. And you've learned how to make some things too. So take the time, show your kids, work on it. Peace.